As we begin to watch Kate swim, we can see we're looking for a body position to start with. And our body position is generally quite good. We've got reasonably high hips, we've got reasonably high legs, which we can't quite see on the camera shot at the moment. But we can also see we've got a very high head position. And if we just push her head position down just a little bit and get her to look towards the bottom of the pool a little bit more, so looking straight down almost at 90 degrees, it will lift her hips up and it will lift her legs up. And by doing that, it will make her much more neutral in the water. Her leg position, her leg kick is actually quite good. We're kicking from the hips with a slight flex in the knee and slight pointy toes. Kate's actually doing a 6-beat leg kick, which is a little bit quick for triathlon. And if anything, I'd ask her to maybe slow down just a touch. But generally, her leg kick's fine. And I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time working on a leg kick because you're going to need those for the bike and the run later on. What does have to happen though is you have to be efficient through the water. And by doing that, we're looking for that leg kick again. So you're looking for those pointy toes, nice, just raising the heels. Now if we can put her head down, it's just going to bring her legs up that little bit higher. What we can also see now is as Kate uses her arm action, she puts her doesn't really use her hips to help with that arm action. And she's very flat in the water. And what we need to do is try and really get Kate to really emphasize some hip rotation and really drive the stroke from the hips. What we can also see is as Kate's putting her hands into the water, her hands are going in thumb first. And as they're going in thumb first, the first thing you have to do with your hand then is to rotate your shoulder inwards, and that causes the elbow to drop. And I bet you when we look underneath the water in a second, what we'll see is her hand goes into the water and then her elbow ends up below her hand very, very quickly. And what's also you can notice here is that as Kate's putting her hands into the water, they're getting very, very close to that centre line. I'm just focusing there on showing that there's no hip rotation coming out from the hips, no real drive from those hips. So we need to work on getting the hand into the water, fingers first, think about that smiley face on the palm of the hand, and driving the water back. Now from underwater, we can see very clearly that Kate's head is quite high. You can see from the push off there. And we can fix that quite quickly in a moment. But you can see from the arm action here, her fingers go into the water and then she's pushing almost down on top of the water. And we'll do this in slow motion in a little while. But look, pushing down on top of the water and then pulling with the elbow. And you're not really getting that efficient drive from the hips and from the back to push the water back behind you, pushing it all the way back past the hips. What's also good to see under here is I can see very clearly that Kate's swimming with breathing every 3, and she's also breathing out as she's swimming along. She's trickle breathing, and you can see that quite clearly by the bubbles around her nose and her mouth, which is very, very good, and I'm really, really pleased to see that. I'm also quite pleased to see tumble turns, but that's a slight aside. So what we're going to do in just a moment is we're going to break this stroke down a little bit further. But what is this shot is very, very clearly showing is look where the elbow is in relation to the hand. The arm almost bends the wrong way. And what we're trying to achieve is to get the arm on top of the hand so that the elbow is above the wrist throughout the stroke. So as she pushes off the wall this time, just watch what her hand position does with the arm nearest to us. She's putting her hand into the water. You can see quite clearly it's going underneath the body, which is good, and you're getting that drive through the water. You're not really getting that drive through the water. Kate's hands look quite tense as well. They look quite tight in the water. So we need to try and get her just to relax those hands just a little bit more. But you can see she's pushing down on the water rather than catching the water and driving it straight back. Pushing down is just pushing her body up. So as we look at this next shot, we've got a snapshot here of Kate's stroke, and you see quite clearly that her hand has crossed the axis. You can see where her fingers are over the red line, which is the centre line that we're trying to not cross. The pink line is showing where the arm should be, and the yellow circle is showing that her elbow has actually dropped into the water before her hands finished reaching forward. From this shot underneath the water, you can very clearly see that her head's looking too far forward, so she needs to put her eyes down. What we can also see is the blue circle where her hand goes into the water, and we're going to follow that in just a second. But we can also see where the green line is. That's where her hand should be. And what we're moving on to now is we're going to slowly watch Kate's hand as it goes into the water. And you can see as she turned her hand to catch the water, she's dropped her elbow. And she's pushing down on top of the water here. She's still pushing down, she's still pushing down. We still haven't caught the water. We still haven't caught the water. Now we've caught the water, and we're going to drive the water back and push the water back. So that first bit of the stroke was doing absolutely no good whatsoever, and we need to eliminate that. What we've done here is very quickly we've put Kate into a head down position. I've got her to drive off the wall with her head squashed behind her elbows, so it really squeezes those elbows behind her head, and that's making her really get into a much more neutral position in the water. And straight from there, we're getting her to do fingernail trail. And what we're focusing on here is training the little finger into the water first to try and eliminate that thumb entry first. The thumb entry first causes an awful lot of shoulder problems, and I know Kate's had an injury in the past, so we're trying to eliminate that straight away by just trailing the little finger in first. We're using catch-up drill to try and eliminate the hand crossing that centre axis. The hands need to be a little bit lower in the water, a little bit more stretched out, and we need to get a little bit more hip rotation, which is very awkward from catch-up because you're very flat in the water by holding your arms out in front of you. But it's looking a lot better, and it's stopping that hand crossing that centre axis, which is what we're trying to achieve. We're going to move on now to a drill called 636 drill. Now the 636 drill is an excellent drill. It really gives you that opportunity to think about what you're doing. So 3 good strokes, take a breath, face back in the water. Now Kate's head's just a little bit high here, and she's just put it down. But you can see straight away she's already thinking about the smiley face on the palm of her hands, and you can see, just looking at her hand action, that her hands are looking a lot more focused, a lot more driving down towards the bottom, and she's catching the water a lot sooner. And that's really starting to look like a front crawl stroke. Look, much better drive off the wall. Look how much more streamlined that is. Nearly caught me out there because she's gone almost past the camera. Now we just need to keep that hand pointing down towards the bottom a little bit more. That left hand, the one furthest away from us, is pointing up. The right hand's doing as well, but the left hand's just creeping up. You can see the elbows below the wrist there. We need to make sure that the hand stays below the elbow. The elbow's not in the wrong place, it's the hand that's in the wrong place. We just need to focus on keeping that hand a little bit lower in the water. And then to finish off, I've got Kate to try and think about smiley face out wide, smiley face out wide, and then keeping those arms moving. So you're keeping that arm flowing through the water, and we can see we're trying to hold that lead arm out in front of us just a little bit longer. Go right the way back to that diagram a few minutes ago. We can really see that Kate's starting to generate a nice long stroke and just getting a little more strength and structure to her drive back in the water. Looking at it underneath the water, you can see that we're just holding that lead arm out a little bit longer than we were, but we also need to keep the fingers into the water. They're a lot better than they were, but that left hand, we need to get it into the water and straight down towards the bottom. Don't be frightened to go down. At the moment you're going in and you're still scooping along the surface, but much better.
Word to your mother.